Carl, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. For those who haven't met you before and don't know you through CertainPath, share with everyone your name and what you do with CertainPath.
Sure, Bob. Thanks for having me, by the way. I enjoy doing these things. Carl DiBene, obviously, working with CertainPath. I'm a strategic business advisor with the group, and I also work in the training department doing a little bit of training programs. But what I really do is I do, quarterly on-site visits with a select group of contractors where we work on their strategic operations.
Yeah.
And look at different ways of improving their business moving forward.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
How long will you spend at an office? Each day, or each week.
Typically, it's 2 days.
Yeah.
I'll come in on a Tuesday morning, spend all day Tuesday, all day Wednesday. By the time I leave Wednesday, we have a 90-day plan.
Yeah.
Put in place, and then over the next 2 months, we'll have like a Zoom call.
Yeah.
The month after, follow up, see where we're at. The month after that, we'll do the same thing, and then I come in for another visit.
Now, you've been doing it, I guess it's been about a year, right?
A little over a year.
Yeah. How neat's it been to see these businesses progress and evolve?
It's been really cool.
Yeah.
It's been really cool watching some of them, take the plans and put them in place, and then, listen to the joy when they're talking about, they're up 150,000, 200,000 year over year.
Yeah.
With what I pride myself in is, let's not spend any more money.
Right.
Let's see if we could save some money and get more results. And that's really what I look at doing.
Yeah. And you're not working with little guys. And a lot of it's big,
No, it's bigger
size contractors.
Yep. I've had a few small ones. That's a little tougher because they're still in the business. So it's harder for them to execute on the plan, still being in a truck and whatnot. But the bigger businesses, man, it's really cool to see.
Yeah. So you've been back with us for what? So 13, 14 months, something like that?
Yeah, about a year and a half, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this isn't your first shot, right? But let's go back to the original Carl story and how you got into this trade.
Okay. I got into the trade, like I said, I think in 1997.
Okay.
As a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
I was a bookkeeper for a company called Dixie Plumbing and Air. It was a small little plumbing company that was adding air conditioning. And, I answered one of the ads and never thought I'd be in the plumbing business, but
yeah.
It was pretty cool because it was a really small company at the time. And, I was the bookkeeper, but backup call taker really, because we had a young lady that worked, as the call taker, but if she was on the phone, I was the next in line. So,
right.
So it's pretty cool. I really learned the business from that bookkeeping, call taker, dispatch kind of area.
Yeah.
And then evolved into, training technicians and working in the sales department and becoming the general manager / sales manager. So, the evolution was rather quick. I mean, I went from, it's a great day at Dixie Plumbing and Air. This is Carl. How can I make you smile? To, now I'm the general manager. That was less than 6 months.
Wow.
Because it was a small company.
Yeah.
For me, I spent 8.5 years in the military.
Yeah.
And, they developed a lot of leadership skills, military guy. I love military guys because they have this certain discipline and, a leadership ability that really it translated into the service business.
Yeah.
Because, it's a blue collar thing and, military guys, they tend to be blue collar guys. So
yeah.
It kind of works.
Yeah.
I think.
So what was the next step in your career? So you weren't there for all that long.
No, I was only there, 2.5, 3 years before, back then. God, it wasn't even
3 or 4 name changes ago.
Yeah. It wasn't even SGI then. It was, I forget what it was.
It was Plumber.
Well, it was just Plumber Success International and Airtime 500. But, y'all came knocking on my door and said, "Hey, we have an opportunity to take over the training."
Yeah.
For the organization and
New Millennium Academy.
It was New Millennium Academy.
Yeah.
So I was the first president of New Millennium Academy.
Yeah.
A funny story. I, was going through some stuff in my garage because of the flood. And I stumbled on a 2003 budget book from Venvest.
Wow.
And, back then it was like in a leather binder. It was really cool.
Yeah.
They used to give it to the board. And there's a section for each group, Airtime 500, PSI, remember Contractor Services.
Oh, yeah.
And so they had New Millennium tab. So, obviously I go in there and they had the original org chart. And it was really cool to look at that and go, holy cow.
Yeah.
In there it had how many people we trained for the year. So Yesterday, I think in the update, Rebecca said that, we trained over 5,000 people this past year.
Yeah.
I looked at that one in 03, it was like 1,600 people.
Yeah.
So just the evolution has been really cool.
It's cool.
And if you think about that, we've trained over 5,000 people this year. That's, at 5,000 people a year, we're touching a lot of lives, and that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Which is why I came back. That's what everybody loves here.
Yeah.
And what we do is we get to touch the lives of a lot of people and change them, make them better. And there's nothing more satisfying than that.
I totally agree. Your business journey didn't stop here, though. You left for a little bit, more than a little bit. But it was a great experience. So,
Oh yeah.
Kind of share with everyone a little bit what's your next stop.
Yeah. So I left here. I forget what years, 07, 08, something like that.
Yeah.
And went to ARS, American Residential Services.
Yeah.
What a great organization that was when I first joined it. Dave and Don were the president and COO, and man, they were about $350 million when I started.
Yeah.
They had acquired the business when it was about $250 million, and I was there for 14 years.
Yeah.
14 years, and they were the first residential service company to make it over $1 billion. That was the target. And I remember for years and years, we, Jim Abrams talked about getting to $1 billion. Well, these guys got there.
Yeah.
And it was a fun ride.
Yeah. Big hand in it.
I would like to think so.
Yeah.
I started off as a region manager in our Florida area. We had like 6 branches there in Florida that I kind of took under my wing. And then that evolved to a division sales manager in our central division. That was about, I want to say it was 13 or 14 businesses.
Yeah.
In a large geographical area. And I worked for a guy by the name of Chris Evans. What a great operator he was. I don't think I've ever met a better operator than him.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. Learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
A lot. And, we do these branch visits kind of like I'm doing now, where you just go to branch to branch to branch and you do these operational reviews and find the tweaks.
Yeah.
And the thing that I learned from them, probably the biggest thing, originally here, we wanted to treat everything like it was a McDonald's franchise.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I was always the dream.
Yeah. It's a McDonald's franchise. Anybody could run them. And the advice I got from Chris Evans when I first met him was like November of whatever year that was. I can't remember. But we had just finished budgets.
Yeah.
And he said, look, Carl, on January 1st, we kick off the football.
Yeah.
And we're going to manage, it was 13. We're going to manage 13 different businesses through 4 quarters.
Yeah.
And each team's different.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me.
Yeah.
Because I was always, I was brought into the business where this is, it's a franchise. Everybody does the same exact thing. Well, that's not the case.
Yeah.
There's different players, and it'd be no different than, a wing T offense compared to a run and gun offense. I mean, you need certain players for a run and gun that you don't have when you have a wing T offense.
Yes.
Right. So you just can't take that offense and mold it. And I saw more businesses broken by trying to play the franchise game or the McDonald's franchise game than I did with these guys.
Yeah.
And these guys, when I say these guys, it was Dave, Don, and Chris Evans. There's a few others in there too that I could mention, but they're the ones that were some of the original players in True Green.
Yeah.
I remember True Green.
Sure.
And same thing. They grew that to like $1.2 billion.
Yeah.
And they had 300 and some locations around the country.
Tickets on those.
Yeah. So that's what they said, man. $149 average ticket. I mean, it's crazy. So they had 340 businesses they had to manage around the country.
Right.
So the understanding of managing multiple locations really is where I took off, where it really sunk in with me. How do you do that?
Yeah, and you were like running the whole western part of the U.S.
Sales, I was responsible for sales for the whole western U.S.
Yeah,
about a little under $500 million.
Yeah, so just you were Florida.
Oh yeah, well all the time. There's sales managers that I worked through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if your numbers hit $1.5 million in a day, I mean, you got to hit $1.5 million right a day. So when you want to talk about, hey, how many leads do I have on the board? How many over 10 opportunities do I have on the board? What do we need to add to the day by branch? I mean, those are things that I had to have answers to.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I want to do that to set the stage because I want to get into some high level topics.
Okay.
Some things that I think are hot topics in our industry today.
Right.
And so if you're good with it, I'd like to dig in.
Yeah.
we always talk gross margin, right? Obviously, it's a gross margin business, but what other, can we dig down a little deeper? What certain KPIs should people really kind of be keeping an eye on to know if their department's being effective or not?
So at the end of the day, every day starts with, how many service or sales calls do I have every day?
Yeah.
How many do I need? How many do I have? Everybody has to have a plan every day, every week, every month, right? A big thing I see is even with big businesses, even if they do a budget, not all of them do budgets,
right?
But even if they do a budget, the budget is done October, November, sometimes even into December, but it should be done by December. The budget really is just a projection based off of what we did this year, right? And I don't know if that's right or wrong. We don't know what's going to happen with weather, with personnel, right? What I do know is right or wrong is our exact results from last year. And so I always try to drill in people, do your budget. That's your plan.
Yeah.
But you have to, going forward, continue to evolve the budget and the plan.
Yeah.
Based on what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Right. I hear this thing, budget's your promise. Yeah. I mean, look, your budget's your plan. It's an educated guess on what we could do next year.
Right.
I know what I did last year.
Right.
Am I progressing? Am I moving forward?
Right.
Right. Because sometimes people get budget in their head, and if they're doing really well and they're at budget, they kind of put it on cruise control. No, we got a new plan based on how we're performing,
right,
where we could take budget to another level.
Right.
Right. But don't be satisfied with where you're at.
Yeah.
If things are progressing better, if we came up with another lead source that's starting to really produce, let's build that into next month's plan, next quarter's plan.
Right.
Because it wasn't built into last year's budget, and let's accelerate this thing. And some people just kind of get on a cruise control kind of thing, and it's a mentality with the leadership team that, hey, we're at budget, we're good.
Yeah.
And sometimes based on how people are bonused, towards the end of a month, they may start slowing it down a little bit, putting stuff in the next month so you get next month's bonus because I've already hit this one. So there's these different things you have to look at that really start to impact the business week to week, month to month.
Yeah.
But I guess I wandered off the original question.
Well,
what KPI?
Yeah, but no, that's a good foundational. Yeah, because that does feed into the KPI.
Yeah.
Right. We're growing, but you grow by making sure the numbers day to day are right. So what other numbers should, I know you have certain things you always look for in businesses.
Absolutely. I'm always looking for, where we are on the number of calls we're running.
Yeah.
Every day. I can't change our marketing results today or tomorrow. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do, right? Marketing is the marketing, and we could work on that.
Yeah.
But that's not a short-term fix. That's a more of a long-term fix. Yeah. So my focus is always on what do we got?
Yeah.
What's coming into the business, and how are we managing that?
Yeah.
And I always call that, opportunity management. How are we managing the opportunities we have in front of us? Right. Because I get a lot of people go, oh, we need more calls. We need more of this. And then there's this complaint. It's like, hey, what are we doing with what we got?
Yeah.
Because I have no control over the other stuff.
Right.
Right. I can only control what I can control. And that's what I got on the board today.
Right.
Or what I'm getting put on the board today. And I guess when we talk about call center, we'll talk about that and what they can do to help. But what do I got on the board today? And how are each individual call being managed?
Right.
Right? Is it getting to the right person? And everybody will tell you, I'll go to any business and they'll say, yep, we do call by call management. Yep, we dispatch for profits. And then when you get down and dirty, digging into it, there's tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars of opportunity in that.
Right.
Because, and I said this yesterday in one of the meetings, and Gus just repeated it on stage. Sometimes we allow $18 to $20 an hour people to make multi-million-dollar decisions for our businesses.
Yeah.
And we can't do that.
Yeah.
As a leader, and depending on the size of your business, you're getting a bigger business, the more layers of management you have between you and that dispatch board.
Yeah.
But that dispatch board is where all the money is.
Right.
And, when you look at these businesses now, when you're looking at a bigger business, to me, it's like Moneyball. That movie?
Sure.
Where, now we have to use a lot of data to make decisions. Data doesn't tell the whole story. I get that, but it could help you make some better choices, better decisions, especially when you only got a certain amount of calls to manage.
Yeah.
On who's getting them, why they're going to get them. A number I always make every business calculate when I get there and I show them how to do it is their tickets over and under $1,500.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's kind of been the mantra of this meeting. And those tickets over and under $1,500, if you have a technician that 45% of his tickets are over $1,500 and another technician where only 12% of his tickets are over $1,500, they're both good technicians. And when you run a blended average ticket, they might look good because those 12% might be a couple of big jobs that make his blended average ticket look okay.
Right.
But if I got one call to run and I got these two technicians, I want a 45% chance of getting something over $1,500, not a 12% chance.
Absolutely.
And that's the money ball part I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Think about the best thing you've learned on this podcast, or any podcast ever. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how life-changing was it? Did it change whether you could take vacations or where you vacation? Did it change how much time you spend with your family or what you could provide for your family? Now, I'm not saying learning new things that make a smaller impact isn't helpful. Of course it's helpful. So is hearing from people who've been in your shoes and who know what you're going through. It's why we made this podcast. And we hope you get new insights, tips, and techniques from it, as well as encouragement. But if you're looking for a truly life-changing transformation, then information alone isn't going to do it. You need a coach. I'm Rebecca Castle, CEO of CertainPath, and I know you need a coach because I needed one when I was in your shoes, running a home service business where I was the CEO, the head trainer, the ops manager, the salesperson, the call taker, and everything else. That's why I'm certain that knowledge isn't enough, because I'd been a coach to home contractors before starting my company. I knew all the stuff, the right things to do, the procedures and strategies, and I still needed a coach. Fortunately, I had one, so I was able to grow that tiny HVAC company large enough to sell it for life-changing money. And since coming back to what was then SGI and coaching other home service businesses through that same life-changing journey, I know what's possible when you're given the tools and a coach and a community. But you don't have to take my word for it. I'll prove it to you. If you've got 90 minutes, I have a free virtual starter session that'll beat any podcast or seminar you've ever taken for delivering truly transformative content. It's free, no commitment. We just want to share with you 4 major things that we do think are the first steps to transforming your business. And all you have to do is go to mycertainpath.com and book a starter session. Because as helpful as our podcasts are, I'm betting you're going to find our starter sessions to be the best first steps you can take towards true transformation.
The departments that do really well at dispatching,
Mm-hmm.
what are some common things you've seen? Those really good dispatchers or
Yep.
good managers that work at hand in hand. What are some things that they do that it's like, that's a good department?
So a dispatcher that gets it realizes that they're not just moving pieces around a board.
Yeah.
They research every call.
Yeah.
They're looking at Zillow. They're looking at BuildZoom. They're identifying the ages of the homes of equipment. If they can't find it on BuildZoom, they could pull data and find out, okay, there was a water heater permit pulled there 12 years ago. So we know that house has at least 12-year-old water heater, things like that. So they're doing that research to help the service manager or sales manager understand who's going to be best suited for that call.
Yeah.
So it's all about the information you get coming in and the research they do behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I used to have a sales manager in Riverside, California. And this was for a plumbing company. It was a big drain cleaning company. And he would actually get the Google Earth and look to see if there's scars in the yard in the neighborhood to know that that's a neighborhood that has drain issues.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's the amount of research you do before that piece of gold, that's what I like to call it, that piece of gold gets assigned to a technician
Yeah.
or a salesperson.
Are there certain like characteristics of great dispatch? Like where they come from? Like, is it just a call taker that gets promoted, or is it a management type person? Like what's a good, when hiring that role?
It's easier when you got a group of call takers and you see which ones are detail oriented, which ones start to get what we're trying to do. And that's another thing, when you talk about the relationship, with the dispatcher has that relation with the call takers. They understand, but also the service manager or sales manager. I mean, everybody has to be on the same page. right? It's not about my department and my department. It's about our department.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is ours.
Yeah.
Right. So from the call taker all the way through the technician on the ground and the leadership in between needs to understand what the ultimate goal is of the business, right? Yes, we're here to take care of homeowners and we're here to do the right thing by the homeowners, but we only have a certain capacity. So in doing so, we have to maximize what we do with the capacity we have. If we're not at max capacity and we're running under capacity,
yeah,
it's what we're doing with those calls, and that's more important than anything else.
absolutely.
And when the CSR understands that, they're going to get the right information and make sure it's on the front end. The dispatcher's doing the research. This way, when the service manager is taking a look at the call and the opportunities on the board for the day, he's got the detail to make the right choices, and it's not we stumble on opportunity.
Right.
Because I've been to some businesses where, it's done by accident.
Yeah.
It's just about moving people around the board, and they say they're dispatching for profits, but are they really?
Yeah.
It's just one of those cliches now, dispatch for profits.
Yeah.
When I first got in the business, like, oh, that's genius. Now it's a cliche.
Yeah.
It's a complete cliche, and nobody manages call by call dispatch for profits to make sure it's happening.
Is there a way to get better at it? Like, what tips, if you had someone like, I see you have talent at this, but you got to get better. Well, how do you coach some dispatchers to get a little better?
Again, it starts with the understanding.
Yeah.
One of the best comments, when you're talking about somebody is like, yeah, that person gets it.
Yeah.
Right. They have to get it. And how do you coach it? It starts from the beginning when they are a CSR.
Yeah.
Right. What's the intent of what we do every day? It's not to run as many calls as we can. It's to run the best calls that we can. And we have to identify those best calls. Yeah. Right. One thing I used to like to do years ago, and I think we've kind of gotten away from it is for a CSR to understand what it cost for that call. These things are costing in excess of $300
right
now. Right. Marketing's crazy. It's nowhere near what it used to be. It's evolving every year.
Yeah.
And, so you pick up that phone, that's $300. If you don't book it, you hang it up. That's $300. If you had to write a check for that, for $300 for hanging it up, would you do something different?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of understanding what we're attempting to do.
Right.
Right. What our desire is every day, what the goals are every day, what we need to get on the board every day from every level.
Yeah.
The coaching, they're going to make mistakes. They always are. Right. When I was a GM, again, it was a smaller company, so this isn't going to be, somebody's running a $10 or $12 million business, but, the dispatch manager, if they have one, if not the service manager, they need to sit down early on and help them make those decisions. All right, we're going to assign this one to Bob. Right. Here's why we're assigning it to Bob. And there'll be an evolution where now the dispatcher will come to you and say, okay, I'm giving this one to Bob because good choice.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's that evolution where first you teach them and show them why you're making that. They have to understand the why you're making that decision, why you're giving it to that person.
Yeah.
And then once they understand that, they'll start to tell you why.
Yeah.
And when the whys are starting to match,
yeah,
now you got a good dispatcher. But that doesn't just happen with a week of training.
Right.
That is an evolution that's going to depend on the person, could take months.
Yeah.
But you got to nurture that person up.
Yep. It's a process.
Yes.
That's what we're going to get to.
Yep.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
Everyone thinks we did this for a week. Why don't you get it?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Oh, yeah. Or I hired somebody who already has experience. So,
yes,
I'm plug and play. Yeah. Come on, man.
I talk to somebody about you do more than I do.
Yeah.
That just think, I hired that person. They did. I'm like,
yeah, no. You got to sit down and you got to spend the time. And that's the thing is you got to spend the time.
Yeah.
And I say it and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, but nothing is more important than sales in a business.
Yeah.
Except safety. Right. We got to be safe about everything we do. But beyond that, it's driving that revenue.
Yes.
And it starts at that call center. And if that's the foundation of building revenue.
Yeah. When you said starts call center, but getting back to the KPIs a little bit, when you go to these businesses and you start seeing gross margin fluctuations,
yeah,
what do you do to drill down at that point and see what's going on? Why are we having these radical swings? And
that's a thing that makes me a little crazy sometimes because not only with the margin but the profit. You'll see a business did $740,000 in a month, made $175,000. Okay, nice month. Next month they do $756,000, and they only made $40,000. What? Same revenue. What's going on? And you'll start seeing those fluctuations in the margins, and it ends up being an accounting issue, right? Because we have you got cash or accrual, but I go to some businesses and it's mixed. They do some accrual, some cash, and it's only because it's easier to just expense it when I get, or that's the way my accountant that I send my stuff to wants it. Yeah, I'm sorry, you're paying them. You tell them how it's going to be, not how they want it. Right. As far as I'm concerned. Right. And I've had this conversation with a few contractors. It's once you get past you have to be on accrual accounting. Yeah, because you're doing bigger jobs. Right. And so if I sold 10 jobs to be installed tomorrow, and tomorrow happens to be October 1st, and I buy all the equipment today, why am I expensing 10 air conditioners today, which is the last day of the month, which is going to go on this month's P&L for work we're doing next month? Right. And I see it all the time. Yeah. People just like to, when they buy it, it's expensed. Yeah. Even if it's for inventory, they buy it, it's expensed in the month that they buy it. Yeah. Even though they're not going to use it for a couple of months. Right. And that's just not how you do it. I mean, true accounting, you match revenue with expense. Yeah. Revenue, expense match. And if they're not matching, you don't have true accounting. You got this, it's more checkbook accounting.
Well, by doing it that way, they don't have a true understanding of what's going on in the business. I think that's what people forget. Oh, good, it's done. We paid it off. Great. Yeah. But you don't know why, you don't have a true understanding of the performance in the field. Yeah. It's just these wild swings. It buries that. Yeah. Like, okay, so once a year, you sort the books out, right? And you go all right, we got the accrual counter set in place, but you still see those wild swings in performance. How do you dig in at that point?
Well, then you start looking at, okay, if I'm seeing, I always look at labor and materials. Obviously, those are the two biggest drivers of what your margin is going to be. There's the other things there. And I look at commissions. Yeah. Right? Because sometimes, because what you'll see is, people are discounting jobs and still getting full commission. Right. I was at a place a couple of months ago, and that's, hey, here's how we pay. And there's a sliding scale. Oh, yeah, that's a great playbank. It works. If you execute it. Yeah. Right? If you execute it, if you're not executing the pay plan, then why even have it? Right. Right? Because there's people discounting 15, 20%. They never get the commission. Yeah. You got to remember, salespeople sell both directions. Right? They're going to sell the homeowner on why they need it, and then they're going to sell their manager on why they should get a full commission, even though they discounted at 20%. Right. Yeah. They sell both ways. Right. And so you have to be disciplined about your pay plans, because you give a little, and you open that window a little, and you'll never close it again. Boy, they're going to keep coming through it. I remember a salesman, hey, I'm at these people's house, I could probably get them at this price, whatever it was. They'll only approve. That's what it was. They were only approved for a certain amount of money, which means he had to get a discount that was going to drop his commission. Yeah. He's like, you think? I said, okay, we'll do it one time. Oh, then he was making a phone call twice a week. Correct. It's like, sorry, no. Yeah. It ain't going to happen. They just want to see if you give a little bit. If you give a little bit, they're going to keep coming after it. Right. So you got to be disciplined about your pay plans. Yeah. You got to be disciplined about your finance plans, because that's the other thing I see is they start using crazy finance plans, 60 months, no interest. And, that's like 16 or 18 points. Yes. Discount. So that's coming right off the top. Right. Right. And then they're getting a 10% commission, and they're discounting at 10%. Yeah. So right off your retail price, and you're already, 36% off. Right. And he's still getting a full commission? Right. Sorry, Charlie. Yeah. Right. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah. So I'm always looking at labor and materials, because if things slow down and you're not paying your installation crews production pay, and you're paying them hourly, jobs they could do in a day now take a day and a half because they want a full paycheck every week. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So, so it's managing the hourly folks for sure. Yeah. You start to see it. So really those are the three areas. So you start seeing, and that's with wild swings. Sometimes you start to see margin degradation, where each month is just going down a little bit, and what's going on. So, obviously you're looking at discounting. Yes. I want to see, are we job costing? Right. A lot of people, now we have the CRM that does it, but nobody ever looks at it. Right. So the job costing is done, but nobody hey, just because it's done, hey, check the box. Boom.
Yeah.
Job costing done. Who's looking at it?
Right.
Who's making adjustments from that? And do your expenses from the job costing now match the P&L?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that happen before where, hey, when we look at all the job costing, we're at a good margin.
Yeah.
Material costs is, running somewhere around 28%, and then you come over here and material cost is at 35%. Where's that other 7%?
Yeah.
Right.
What is the disconnect? What happens?
Sometimes,
Just
salespeople are
walking away.
adding UV lights and it's missing the whole, things like that happen. So, you always marry up the job cost, right, with the agreement that the homeowner signed and make sure it's matching.
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes those things happen.
Sure.
And I'm okay with a salesperson doing that. I'd rather, throw in a UV light that cost me $350 than give $2,000 off.
Sure.
Right. Because I take the 2 cash all day long.
Yeah.
But it's got to be on the agreement. I have to know about it.
Yeah.
It's not a throw in just to close the deal and we'll circumvent the system.
Right. You mentioned financing, and
Yes.
there's so much. There's so many more. It's crazy. What recommendations do you have for guys on how to set up their financing so they're not giving away,
Right.
the whole world with it?
So what I've seen happen with finance, Bob, is, we'll bring on a new finance company and they'll give you their sheet with all their programs on it. And we just give it to all the people.
Right.
And when you look on the sheet, there's so many different programs on there. Number one, it gets confusing. And number two, people start using ones that are expensive.
Yeah.
So once you got the programs you're approved for, now you, as the owner or the leader of the team, determine which ones you're going to use. 2 or 3 is all you need. You don't need 5 or 6.
Yeah.
2 or 3 different programs, right? And that's what the team gets. Yeah. And once in a while, you could throw in a special finance deal. Like we're coming into that time of year. First of all, we got a few forces working against us right now, right? We got an economy. Everybody knows inflation. The economy's crazy. So people are a little nervous.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, it's an election year. So people are going to be nervous, maybe through November. We don't know what's going to happen. If it's kind of like it was last time around, people are going to be a little anxious and nervous all the way through January.
Yeah.
Then you got the holidays.
Yeah.
Right. So we got the triple threat coming up.
Yeah.
That impacts our business and how people are willing to spend money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what I like to have available starting sometime in November is at 6 months, kind of same as cash. It's a little bit more expensive, but you're going to have that. Well, the holidays are coming up. People are, well, go ahead and take care of it today, and we don't have to worry about it for 6 months.
Right.
Right. So having a bridge loan, I don't like having that all the time because it is a little bit more money and it has to be managed.
Right.
Right. It's like if you're going to use it, you're going to have to call in to get permission to use it. Right. And before they call in to get permission to use it, I already know we got something done.
Yeah.
Right. So, the question in the field is, hey, I could probably get this done. Let me call Carl and see, but I know what Carl's going to ask me. If we can do that, can we go ahead and put that on the schedule for tomorrow?
Right. You put that tomorrow.
Boom. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I want a commitment. This way I know if he calls me, we got it to do the 6 months, same as cash.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like people just to be able to give it away.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because like I said, it's expensive.
Right.
So finance programs have to be managed.
Yes.
And if you're going to ever throw out a special finance deal, make sure that you manage it.
Yes.
And it's not just willy-nilly.
How do you talk about managing financing with the salespeople? How about managing discounting? What kind of parameters do you always say to put in place for salespeople?
So for me, minimum, they can, or max, they can go as 5%.
Yeah.
If you're in the field, you can go 5%. Anything past that, you're calling.
Yeah.
Right. You're calling. And the reason I say that is because the close I just said, right? I'll call Carl and ask. I know what he's going to ask me. He's going to ask me if we could put it on the schedule. If we can do that, what can I tell him?
Mm-hmm.
Right. If they're not making a commitment there, I'm not going to negotiate with myself.
Yeah.
So, as sales manager should not be negotiating with themselves. And these are some of the things, Bob, we talk about it on that sales management group that I have on Fridays.
Yes.
These are some of the things that we talk about. It's a pretty cool deal with, sales managers. And we split the groups up. I have roofers and HVAC sales managers.
Yes.
And then I have plumbing and electric, service/sales managers.
Yes.
So it's 2 different groups. So because the discussions are different, but these are the things we talk about. If we're low on calls, what do we do? Right. If our closing's off, what do we do? So it's a pretty good program. And, I learned as much from it as they learn from me. It's just really a cool little group deal. And, those are the kind of things we discuss.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, if you're going to use the, discounting, you better manage it.
Yeah.
When I was selling, if I was given any discount, I wanted to call.
Right.
Right. This is the ego thing with salespeople. Like, I don't need to call for help to close a deal. Well, it's not calling for help to close a deal. It's a strategy to better close a deal.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
And it's a great strategy.
Yeah.
So if I was given any discount, well, I need permission, because if I could just give it willy-nilly, that means I was overpriced.
Right.
Right. So I have to call and get permission. And I know Carl's going to ask me, right? And just get your salespeople accustomed to asking the question that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not a conflict.
No.
We're working together.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll try to help you, but he's going to want to know if we can put it on the schedule.
Right.
I'm on your side.
Yeah.
Right. I don't get paid if he doesn't say yes. So I'm with you. What can we do?
That's right. That's right. We've kind of we've been talking on the sales side, salespeople, HVAC, mold and roofing, obviously. On more plumbing, electrical,
Yep.
that more of that model. When you see the fluctuations in gross margin in performance, what are certain things that tend to cause that?
Well, it's similar stuff, right? On that one's, a lot of times it's labor.
Yeah.
Because it's the service department, and people are on production pay. But then you go there and you start looking into it. Okay, so if you're on, production pay, why is your labor, 25%?
Right.
Well, then you start looking, and we're paying them for all these little other things.
Yeah.
Running around to get parts and all the stuff they're getting paid.
Right.
They got this shop time. And so it's a matter of managing the non-productive time, because they're getting paid for non-productive time. And if there's not a lot of calls, there's a lot of non-productive time that we're paying.
Right.
Right. The other thing is, are they discounting jobs, but still getting, the amount of pay for the retail?
Right.
Is that happening in a business? So not always, it typically ends up being labor.
Mm-hmm.
If I see it in materials, my first question was last time you raised your prices, because materials are going up.
Great.
Just like everything else.
Yeah.
We're up 26 points. I remember I went, when this stuff first started happening, and that probably goes back to, 2019, 18, 19, when metals were real high.
Sure.
I mean, we were like having to raise prices or like price water heaters like daily, because they were going up that quick.
Right.
The pricing. So, we had to get pricing daily on what a water heater was going to be. But there were branches that hadn't raised their prices in 3 or 4 years on service.
Yeah.
They might do it on the big jobs, the big items, but just the service related items, they weren't raising their prices fast enough.
Right.
And so you start doing a lot of service work, you start to see that material costs creep up. So how often are you, again, costing things out to make sure that as these prices creeped up a little bit every month, 4 months down the road, you're eroding your margin.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
So those are things that need to be looked at.
Yep.
The beauty of the CRMs we have now is, you could do it that fast. Yeah. Need a 5% increase. Boom, it's done.
Yeah.
Right. But people still yet don't do it.
Think about the best thing you've learned on this podcast, or any podcast ever. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how life-changing was it? Did it change whether you could take vacations or where you vacation? Did it change how much time you spend with your family or what you could provide for your family? Now, I'm not saying learning new things that make a smaller impact isn't helpful. Of course it's helpful. So is hearing from people who've been in your shoes and who know what you're going through. It's why we made this podcast, and we hope you get new insights, tips, and techniques from it, as well as encouragement. But if you're looking for a truly life-changing transformation, then information alone isn't going to do it. You need a coach. I'm Rebecca Castle, CEO of CertainPath, and I know you need a coach because I needed one when I was in your shoes, running a home service business where I was the CEO, the head trainer, the ops manager, the salesperson, the call taker, and everything else. That's why I'm certain that knowledge isn't enough, because I'd been a coach to home contractors before starting my company. I knew all the stuff, the right things to do, the procedures and strategies, and I still needed a coach. Fortunately, I had one, so I was able to grow that tiny HVAC company large enough to sell it for life-changing money. And since coming back to what was then SGI and coaching other home service businesses through that same life-changing journey, I know what's possible when you're given the tools and a coach and a community. But you don't have to take my word for it. I'll prove it to you. If you've got 90 minutes, I have a free virtual starter session that'll beat any podcast or seminar you've ever taken for delivering truly transformative content. It's free, no commitment. We just want to share with you 4 major things that we do think are the first steps to transforming your business. And all you have to do is go to mycertainpath.com and book a starter session. Because as helpful as our podcasts are, I'm betting you're going to find our starter sessions to be the best first steps you can take towards true transformation.
You talk about performance pay. So I talked to a bunch of guys this week that are still hourly, and they are afraid to make that jump. And it's some convoluted, they'll do hourly, and here's a little small for this and that. Yep. But then they're like, I can't keep my guys accountable to do an inspection. I can't keep them accountable to do options. Well, it's because there's no incentive to do it, right? Other than getting yelled at. Yeah. How do you coach people through those situations where do they just make the jump? How do they make the jump? What are your thoughts on that when you deal with companies like that?
So for me, what I like them to do before they even start talking to their people about it, right? If you want to make the jump, is start running the dual payroll, what they would have got compared to what they have. Right. So you can see if it's going to make sense to them. Because just think about it. No, you're in a truck, you're working, you think you're working hard, 40, 50 hours a week. Right. You're getting paid X amount of dollars, right? If we switch, I'm going to work just as hard and make, $300 less a week. You're not going to convince me. Right. So the concept is, let's do the training now to where when I'm running that side by side, they're actually taking a $300 pay cut by not being on it. Right. And it's got to be a consistency. So when you make the decision, you have to make the decision. Right. You can't go back and forth, because what happens with these guys, they have 2 or 3 good weeks. I was just talking to a member the other day. The guy got paid $4,000 last week. The next week was a little rougher week. I want to go back on hourly. Like, okay, so you can't take the wins, and then when you don't win, it's not a one-way street. Right? There's going to be some ups and downs. Yeah. The concept is, are there going to be more ups than downs? Yeah. So it's about running it parallel without them knowing. Right. So that you could see, does it make sense at this point? And if it doesn't make sense at this point, what changes am I going to have to make? Because these folks don't grow on trees, right? Right. So if I just, sorry, we're doing it tomorrow. Yeah. You lose 3 or 4 or 5. Right. I had a company that did that, and they lost 4 or 5 people. Yeah. Well, that was half of his trucks empty now. So now his production's down to 50%. Now he's not hitting his break even, and we got a problem. Right. So you can't just, some people will just say, just do it. Well, yeah, you can't just do it. Yeah. You have to be ready to do it. And that's why I say run it side by side. Yeah. And you have to sell them on the why. Yeah. Right, that whole time. Why it's going to help you. It's going to help you. What's in it for me? Right. What am I going to get out of it? And the other thing is, am I providing that person with the proper training? That's where I was going to go next, because you can't go and then let them hang out to dry, not get them out. Yeah. That's why, see where they are. Yeah. All right. Now we have to work on it. I'm not even talking to them about it yet. I want to see where we are. Right. On that kind of pay plan. And if everybody's going to go backwards, I need to work on getting them better, right? Now I have to make some decisions on some folks. Are they trainable? Yeah. Right? Do they get it? Yeah. Right? So just running contests and things like that, while they're still hourly, you see it, hey, can they do it? Yes. And then it's the training piece. Have they been, we provide some pretty outstanding training. Yes. If you send your folks to it. Right. Right. And I'm a fan of. And yourself. Yeah. And I know, things are challenging, and so a lot of people do the online training. I'm not going to say anything about online training other than, there's this immersion part of training, and then this, this consistent training that we're doing in our businesses. Yeah. That immersion of somebody coming to a place for 2 or 3 days, spending times with technicians that are doing the same things they're doing every day. And no then distractions. No distractions, just getting immersed in what they're doing. Right. They'll get it, and they come back. Now you reinforce it. Yes. Right. And I think online's great for reinforcing. Yeah. Yeah. It's 2.5 hours a day for 3 days, so they get the training in the morning, boom, they're out in the afternoon. They get the training in the morning, boom, they're out in the afternoon. Yeah. I think it's great reinforcement training. Yes. I'd like to see more folks coming to the live training. It's what's going to get them there. Right. Right. So if you go to some of these businesses and you say, okay, we're hourly because the guys, they're afraid of it. And that's where the fear comes from. You sit in a group of technicians in a training program where Most of them are on production pay or performance pay, and they're making great money.
Right.
That's not a crazy idea.
Right. I better listen.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, because all they're hearing is the stuff over at the supply house about, oh, you go to hourly, you're guaranteed. They're hearing all that crap.
Yes.
Right. They need to hear from the people that are winning.
Right.
With the program.
Right.
And that comes through us.
Yes.
Right. Because people are afraid because they have this self-doubt about me being able to generate X amount of dollars in revenue to get my pay.
Yeah.
Because maybe they've never produced that much, or they only produce that much once in a while.
Yeah.
Again, are we training them the right way? Are we coaching them individually? It's not always group. Yeah, we have our group meetings, but, where's Bob falling short?
Yeah.
On his over under 1,500.
Right.
Because he's only getting 12%. What's it going to take to convert more of these jobs? Well, let's look at these jobs.
Yeah.
Let's look at the options you provided. And then if you're providing good options, but it's not happening, it's a communication issue. How are we competing? Let's role play.
Yeah.
Let's role play and share with me how you're presenting the options, because that could be the problem.
Yeah. How often are you recommend those one-on-one situations where you're looking at the ticket?
At least every other week.
At least every other week.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you're identifying your folks.
Yes.
And if you got A's, B's, and C's, the concept is, how do we get the C's to B's?
Right.
So I'll probably spending more time. I might be with them weekly.
Yeah.
Might meet with them at the beginning of every week. We have our Monday meeting, and then they're staying after a little bit. And I meet with my C's and just talk about last week's calls and what we're going to do. Yeah.
Not beating them up.
No, coaching them up. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's what are we going to do this week? Monday is about focusing on this week. Let's recap last week. What can we do different and better, and go do it?
Yes.
Right.
You mentioned Monday. I love we talked,
Yeah.
I don't know what, we were working on a presentation or something. And you're like, why are people training on Thursdays? And I was like, that's brilliant. And it's so obvious, but I was kicking myself in the ass. I was like, so share with everyone your philosophy on training on Monday.
Well, Monday, number one, I get everybody in. I get to see their bright smiling faces.
Yeah.
See that we're prepared to work for the week. We recap last week, and we set targets for this week.
Yeah.
Any challenges we had last week, we talk about it. But it's an upbeat, like you said earlier, it's an upbeat meeting.
Yes.
This isn't where we bring them in Monday, let's beat them up because last week was lousy, and whip them and send them out into the field, because we want them inspired.
Right.
We want them feeling good about going out there and saying, okay, yep, I was a little off last week, but hey, here's what I learned today.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in how to present the three options, or how to handle certain objection, whatever. Should always have, a topic, what we're talking about, which may have been a weakness or as a current weakness from the week before.
Yep.
And then set new targets for the week. And it's not blanket. This is, I talk about, how we spread calls like peanut butter, where everybody gets the same number of calls. We don't do that. And we don't spread goals like peanut butter.
Yeah.
Right. This is, basketball. Michael Jordan goes out. His expectation is that he's going to produce 38 points a game.
Yes.
Steve Kerr, we expected him to produce 12 points a game.
Right.
We didn't just spread it out. We're going to score 100 points, so everybody has to do 20.
Right.
No. And it's the same way here. So your goal for the week is going to be different than my goal.
Right.
Right. And the goal is set with a little bit of improvement.
Yes.
A little bit of improvement for everybody.
Right.
So if I hit my target, but my target was $1,000 less than yours, Bob, I'm still getting high five and belly button because I hit my target.
Yeah.
Even though I was $1,000 less than Bob.
Right.
Right. Because I'm Steve Kerr and you're Michael Jordan.
Yes.
Right. We gotta hit what we gotta hit to make the thing work.
Yep. All important parts of the team.
Yes, absolutely.
But just like you said earlier, you can't manage every business the same way.
Right.
You can't manage every person the same. Yep. But I love that you started on Monday.
Yep.
To get them on the right path, right? And then the big meeting with everybody, your C players, you meet with them afterwards for a little bit, coach them up. Everyone's feeling good.
Yep.
And so you give them the best chance to succeed.
Absolutely.
So then what's the management then look like call by call? Like say I'm a plumber. How should I be managed by a service manager to be successful the rest of the week? So I'm feeling good, but maybe I had a crap first call. So what does that look like to get me back going for the next one?
So it's the beauty with technology, right? I mean, call before, call after. If I got a C player and he goes out to his first call and we just talked about it. He goes out to his first call and just fumbled.
Yeah.
Let's talk afterwards.
Yep.
Call me. Now, personally, if you're not closing a call, I want you to call me anyway.
Yes.
Because we're going to talk, right? Put me on speakerphone. We're going to see if there's a different approach to this and see if we can't close the business there. If we can't, we're going to talk afterwards, what we could have done different.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I always want to, where do you think it went sideways?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What did they say when you said that? Yeah. Did you ask them this question or that question, whatever it is?
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it's just a little bit of that.
Yes.
And they just need that positive reinforcement. It's like, okay, that one's behind you, right? Yesterday's over my shoulder, right? I can't keep looking back.
Yeah.
But we can learn from that and not do it again.
Yeah.
And this is how you start to decide if somebody's coachable and trainable.
Mm-hmm.
Because they come off of that call, they go to the next call, and they do the same exact thing after we just talked about it. Maybe he's not so coachable.
Right.
Does that mean he doesn't belong on our team? I don't know. Is he a good plumber?
Yeah.
Is he a good plumber that does good work and just not a good communicator?
Right.
And they're out there.
And maybe you find a new role for him, right?
Yes, there's a role for him.
Yeah.
Hey, we need people to do good callback work,
Yes.
good warranty work, that makes people happy. And that might be a person we put on hourly because we don't give them production chances. Right. But there's a place for him.
If he fits the culture.
Yes,
he's a good
absolutely.
person. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just not a good communicator. And you can't force somebody to be a good communicator. I'm sorry.
No, I totally agree with
But
that.
there is always room for good plumbers.
Yes. Yeah.
There's people that hey, you could just be a production guy.
Right.
So, Carl goes out and sells a water heater. You follow behind him with a water heater, install it.
Seeing more and more.
Boom.
Of that.
Yeah.
I know.
Because Carl's better being in front of homeowners.
Right.
And he's happier if somebody just comes behind him and does the big jobs that he sells.
Right.
Carl does a small job, he does it and leaves. But big job, I got a guy that can come and do it.
Yeah. I wanted to get to that. You're talking to them after every call because there's so many companies now that go, oh, we don't talk to the guys in between calls. They're just automatically dispatched to the next one.
Yep.
The next one.
Yep.
And then they wonder why their average tickets are not what they should be.
Yeah. Because they're continuing to repeat what they just did.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, call by call management, it's hard. It's hard to do because, I mean, you're on the phone a lot.
Yeah.
However, the result you get from it is worth every minute of your time.
Yes.
It really is. So, if you're one guy and you're managing 10, that gets kind of hard because it's funny how, all the calls kind of end at the same time.
Right.
Right. So it might just be I'm dealing with C players this week.
Yeah.
Let's see if we're making it. And so you guys are calling me after every call. The other guys, they're just calling me if they don't close a call.
Right.
They're calling me from the house. But the C players are calling me before they go into a call because now we're going to look at the notes. I'm going to kind of give you a game plan when you go in, what to look at, what opportunities might exist in that house. I'm going to kind of coach you up on that. You're going to run the call, and then we'll talk after.
Yeah.
Right? So that's coaching the C's to B's, and now we want to coach the B's up to the A's, right?
Right.
So the A players might not have as much contact with me because they're good at what they do. And, hey, unless, they run into a bad day or they run into bad day number 2 or 3, okay, we might be talking.
Yeah.
Everybody has a bad day.
For sure.
Right. But if you run into 3 bad days, now it's a trend.
Yes.
And now we got to start talking.
Yeah.
So, if an A player has a bad day, hey, I'll probably just, give him a pep talk. Hey, what happened today? Hey, you'll be fine tomorrow. Don't worry about it.
Right.
That's it. End of the day. But, your C players, we're building them. We're building. And that's when I said, going back to, are we ready to go to performance pay?
Yeah.
That's what we need to see.
Yeah.
Because those C players, are they coachable? Let's coach them up and get them to where they're making money, or at least they're even. Their hourly is even with their performance pay, and now we can make the change.
Yep.
And by the way, now you could show them that you've been tracking both side by side for the last 2 months.
Right.
Right. For the last 2 months, we've been tracking it. Here's how it lays out. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Then I'll make the shift.
Yeah.
Because the better I get, the more I make now.
Right. Right.
But I know I'm at least even.
Yes.
Right. But the ones that aren't trainable, you have to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
If they're
not given every opportunity.
Yes, that's it. They've had the professional training, they've had the professional coaching.
Yes.
Right. Now, if they're still non-performing, and if they're non-performing and they're not a good plumber or electrician,
yes,
they're just okay. And maybe there's not a sport.
They should know what's coming, by the way.
They should.
If you've been having this many conversations, unless they're that dense, I think everyone knows when it's coming.
Yep.
So,
but sometimes telegraphing, and some people might not agree with me, but sometimes telegraphing that this is coming, they're looking for other jobs.
Yeah.
And you lose them. So that's why I'm like, hey, just run it side by side on the down low. Let's see what we need to improve.
Yeah.
And see if it's workable.
Yes.
And then start talking to them about it, but you have data for a couple of months to show them it's not going to hurt you. It's only going to help you.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, you should have made an extra $4,000 over the last 2 months if you were on performance pay.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked a lot of, revenue management, driving revenue, coaching the frontline folks, right? And for a lot of our companies that are smaller, it's the owner doing it, or, but as they're growing and they want to grow, they want, it's all about replacing yourself, right? Take your hats off, give it to somebody else. So if I want to take that hat off and give it to a service manager,
Mm-hmm.
how do I come from owner as a service manager? I'm stepping back. Now I've got to coach that service manager. We talked about it earlier. Oh, I'm going to hire somebody,
Right.
and he's just going to do it, right? Literally just talked to someone last night that did that and wrecked the whole company, and they're back to square one.
Yep.
How should you be managing? Well, first of all, 2 parts. What are good people look for to fill that role? Do you prefer internal, external? So what does that look like? And then how do you manage that person to be successful then?
Right. So me personally, I'm an internal guy.
Yeah.
I like, because they're already cultural fit. Everybody's already comfortable with them.
Yeah.
So that's what I want. That's not the end all be all though.
Right.
Right.
And they tend, by the way, you kind of see who's the guy that all the other techs go to,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep. Because I mean, the definition of leadership,
Mhm.
right, is the ability to influence people.
Right.
So you look at your existing if we're looking at a service manager, promoting somebody to that job, look at your techs,
Mhm.
to your point, who they go to, who has the most influence on the techs, and is it a positive influence?
Right.
Right. Does this person have, but right. But
Yeah.
is this guy out by the dumpster saying, don't worry, it'll go back to, yeah, he has a lot of influence and ain't the right.
The right one. Yeah.
So, anybody can be a leader if they have the ability to influence others.
Yes.
And it's just, what kind of influence do they support the programs, right? Because you need a person that, like, hey, if we made a decision to do X, right? Maybe you don't agree with it, Bob.
Right.
We come in, we have the conversation, right?
Yep.
But the final decision is we're going to do X. Now you got to be the person that's going to go out there and support X, and not be saying, look, I didn't agree with it, but hey, this is what Carl wants to do, so we're doing. No, a leader, hey, we have the conversation, but if the man says this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, and I support it. Right. You cannot support it behind closed doors when we're having the conversation. And that's one thing I really appreciate about, Chris Evans. I had a seat at the table, and we could sit down and talk about a decision that may have been made. And sometimes he would understand and go my way. And sometimes say, I get it, Carl, but this is why we got to do it.
Yep.
And I had to walk out of that room and say, hey, here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And support Chris Evans.
Right.
That's just the way you do it. So is that person that kind of,
I was going to say, have to be that person.
Yes. So that by managing and watch it, because there's a lot of decisions we make and things that we do that the technicians don't agree with.
Right.
Watch each individual and how they act with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Are they supporting it? I mean, a lot of people just like to take their best technician and do it.
Right.
Or their best salesperson, and now you're a sales manager. That's not always the best person. A lot of times, the person that does something the best was able to do it naturally.
Right.
So they don't know how to teach how to do it because they could just do it.
Yes.
Right. And you need somebody that could be a coach, a teacher, that understands how to get other adults to do the things we want them to do to make their lives better.
Right.
Right. Because that's what we do as coaches.
Yep.
Right. It's our job to make people do the things they don't want to do so they can achieve the things they want to achieve.
Right.
Right. And so it's with our kids. Right. That's what we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And finding that individual is not easy, but you start looking for that on the front end.
Right.
Right. You're not going to have that position available maybe for 2 years. You're looking for it now.
Good point. Great point.
You got to build your
Don't
bench.
just go, I'm tired of doing this.
You got to start when you're hiring, you got to start building your bench strength.
Right.
People that could evolve with the business.
Yes.
Right. Because what I see happen with businesses that are growing fast, and we've got a few, I mean, even though times are tough, we got some businesses that are growing exponentially out there.
Yes.
Right. I mean, out of that group of, I don't know, we got 1,200 folks out there. There's some businesses that are growing fast.
Yes.
And you talk about growing pains because you got a service manager that was managing 4 guys. Well, now you got 14 guys. That's way beyond his capability.
Yep.
It's not that he's a bad guy, but it grew beyond his capability. Right. So that's where you start to see these growing pains. Sometimes the people you have in place now aren't going to be the people you have in place in that growth trajectory.
Right.
So you got to start looking.
Yeah.
Maybe they evolve, but when you go that fast, the person hasn't had a chance to grow himself or herself.
Right.
And that's some of the challenge. They've grown beyond their capability.
Sure.
So sometimes it's beyond the owner's capability.
Yes.
Right. And so, out of desperation, they start making some of these hires and to your point, could ruin a business real quick.
Yes.
It's not a cultural fit. Right. I mean, I've seen businesses that hired managers because they grew too fast, hired managers that live 2 hours away.
Oh. Yeah.
Right. So they're there first thing in the morning, but they're leaving at, 1:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Because they live 2 hours away. Well, no, we don't hire part-time managers.
Right.
That's not a good cultural fit.
Right.
Right. So I'm an internal fan, but you have to start now for future. Now, if it's too late and future's here, if the person doesn't exist, you have to look outside.
Yes.
You can't force a person to be somebody they're not.
Right.
If they're not going to be that person that we just talked about, right, that has the good coaching skills. They're not beating on people, but they're coaching them up. They have this ability to make people want to be better.
Right.
Right. That if you don't have that person in the group, you got to go find them.
Right. What's the best fit? Is it always in industry? Have you found people to fit that service manager role that just has those right traits, but maybe they don't have any idea about plumbing or anything like that?
So I'm not opposed to that.
Yes.
As long as you have the technical expertise.
Right.
Right. If that group of, 7, 8, 9, 10 technicians, you don't have that technical expert in there,
Mm-hmm.
bringing somebody from the outside, it's going to be a train wreck.
Right.
It's going to be because they're going to snooker that person with what's wrong on the field. Callbacks are going to go through the roof. I mean, it's a train wreck. But if you have that technical expertise, and you might have that one technician that now you can call, a field supervisor,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm okay with it as long as those two have a good relationship.
Right.
Right now, we can make that work.
Right.
But if you don't have that, then that person you brought in from outside of the industry is going to get taken advantage of on the technical side of the business.
We've seen that.
Yes, absolutely.
You find the right person, or you hope you find the right person. Maybe it's a technician. Let's say it's one of my, it's an A player, not the top guy, but whatever.
Yeah.
Put him. We approach him. Okay, we want you to do this role. He's like, okay, I'll give it a shot. How do we? Because this is the big thing. How do we coach him up? Because this is a completely different job.
Oh yeah.
So what are some best practices to get me to be successful in this new role?
So first of all, I'd be grooming's probably not a good word anymore. Can't use that word.
Yeah.
Oh. Wow.
That's all right. The world changes. To take words away from us.
I know they ruin all the words.
Yeah.
Now what do you use for that? I don't know. But as you're bringing an individual up, or I think Bob's the guy.
Yes.
Right. I'm going to have the conversation with Bob and say, Bob, hey, as this business grows, I see a future for you.
So you're planting the seed.
Yeah, planting the seed. Now, hey, here's some things I want you to start looking at. And we're going to start teaching, some of the financial end of the business, some of the gross margin part of the business, some of the leadership part of the business. I bring him in, Bob, hey, here's what's going on with Mike. What do you think we should do?
Yeah.
And just start getting to see where his mind is and have him think about what he has to do. Because sometimes when you take a guy from the field, and we used to do this in the Army, if you were in a squad in the Army, and maybe you were a team leader, and now you're going to get promoted to squad leader, they would move you to a different squad.
Yeah.
Because you had a relationship with all these people, and a lot of them were your friends.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so then it gets a little harder to be that leader of your friends.
Sure.
Especially if you weren't by the book.
Right.
Right? Because now you're going to expect me to be by the book, but I know when you had this job, you didn't do that.
Right.
Right? So
yeah,
you have to make sure that, when you plant the seed with this person, that they get it now. You got to be by the book.
Yep.
Right? Because you're going to have to hold people to those expectations, and they can't say, hey, Bob, you never did it.
Yeah.
Why are you telling me I have to do it now?
Right.
Right. So now you got to start being by the book.
Yep.
Play the game the right way, support the program. When we're having our meetings, you should be the one, hey, 100%, of your calls, you did an inspection on.
Yeah.
Or safety evaluation, whatever you want to call it, but you do it on 100% of your calls.
Right.
So now I could start pointing to you and saying, hey, Bob, right?
Yep.
How did you do that?
Right.
Bob? How did you convert that one, Bob?
Yeah.
Right. So people start looking to Bob
Yeah.
as the next guy.
That's great.
And so I'm bringing you up so that when the time comes and maybe I get promoted to general manager, I move over to the sales department, whatever it is, now Bob is going to be a good fit there.
And everyone sees it.
And everybody sees that you were moving up the ranks.
What? Oh, go ahead.
No, that's.
I was just going to say, so you're doing the onboarding
Mhm.
process is
Yep.
what I would call it. And then you put Bob in place. It's not set it and forget it, though. Just like we don't send a tech to training and go, okay, good, you got it, right?
Look, I think, part of it and belonging to CertainPath. I mean, we got the leadership programs and tools.
Yeah.
Right. So sending them to emotional intelligence, sending them to leadership essentials, sending them to service essentials, and then the advanced program so that they got all the knowledge
Yes.
to be the coach,
Right.
And then they're starting to make some leadership connections in the industry
Yes.
so that if I do eventually get that job and I'm challenged, I got people I can call and say, hey, I got this problem with a technician. What do you think?
Yep.
That's what I did.
Right.
I had a guy that was on speed dial.
Yeah.
In Palm Beach County. And when I ran, because I came from outside the industry.
Sure.
So when I ran into a problem, it was like, whoop, hey, what would you do?
Yes.
And I got coached up.
Right.
Because the people I worked for didn't have the answer.
Right.
Right. So I had to go to somebody who's doing the job every day, just like I was.
Right.
He was in a $12 million business. I think we were on a run rate of about $3.5–4 million at that time.
Yeah.
But all the way through the growth curve, I'd call him all the time.
Right. Right.
I'd go visit his business, things like that. But if you got a person that you think is going to be the next guy or gal, start getting them into the training.
Yes.
Start getting them in there. Start to familiarize them with the program, the processes, and they need the education and the knowledge to be the good coach.
Right. Right.
Because we got to coach them up today.
Yeah.
We can't beat them with a stick like we used to in the old days, right?
Yeah. No, it's school. It's different.
Oh yeah.
So we talked on board. That's the training, but
Mhm.
there's also that support, just like the one-on-ones you have with your techs.
Yep.
There's something that has to happen similarly with that service manager.
So as a general manager, now you got even the current service manager, but especially a newer one.
Yeah.
Is in addition to our weekly staff meetings, which we should be having every Tuesday, a staff meeting. But in addition to that is meetings Monday. I like those Mondays afternoons. As a GM, I'll sit down with the sales manager. I'll sit down with the service separately.
Yes.
And let's go through last week.
Right.
Let's talk about this week. Right. And then any coaching I need to do to him, hey, what's going on with, Bob? His
Right.
numbers are off the last 2 weeks. What are we doing?
Yeah.
I planning a ride along. What kind of coaching have you done with them? So it's that accountability, because set it and forget it. Can't be done. Just can't assume that it's being done.
Yes.
You got to make sure it's being done. So as a general manager or owner/general manager, whatever you are, and if you're an owner and you have a general manager, you're doing this with a general manager.
Yes.
But you're sitting down on Mondays specifically and have it in your calendar. It's not, hey, if it happens, it happens. It has to happen.
Yeah.
And we're sitting down and we're specifically talking about your part of the business, and we're doing a review of it for the previous week, month to date, and make sure it's all about, are we moving the needle from last week to this, and take notes. This way, when I sit down with you, Bob, last week we talked about this.
It's a productive meeting.
Yes.
Yep.
We talked about this. What did we do?
Yep.
Well, here's what I did, right? This way it keeps them on task.
Mm-hmm.
But that has to be done.
Yes.
It has to be done. And maybe more frequently with a brand new one.
Yeah, totally right.
Right?
All right. So we had our identification, our onboarding, our training, ongoing support. The other big thing is how do you pay these guys? How do you incentivize them to do a good job?
Right.
Because they're a good guy, but everyone wants incentives. And there are so many ways to screw up incentive pay for management.
Oh, yeah.
What do you recommend for a person like in a service manager role like that?
For me, it's all about the business. Once you go into that management role, it's not just about your department.
Yep.
Because about your department, then you got this fighting about where expenses are going, all this stuff,
Right.
because it's my margin and your I like total business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if the business is hitting its numbers, you're going to get either a fixed amount, and one thing we used to do is like, okay, in this position, it qualifies for a $20,000 bonus, right? Annually. Right? So if you hit your number, it's 20,000, there's some accelerators, and then, it can go as low as 10,000 if you only hit, 90% of budget or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And it's about the profitability more than the top line.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the stuff they can control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want them to not just focus on margin. Margin's part of it, but it's part of the overall business.
Yeah.
But I want them to also, if they're seeing waste down below the line,
That's a great point.
I want them to point out waste below the line because they have skin in the game.
Yes.
And then I like to be able to pay out half of that bonus throughout the 4 quarters.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So if they have a $20,000 potential, 10,000 of it gets paid out quarterly.
Yeah.
Right. So it'd be 2,500 a quarter. So if we hit the quarter, you get 2,500.
Yeah.
Right. You missed the second quarter, you don't get it. Miss the third quarter, don't get it. Hit the fourth quarter, you get it. So you got $5,000. And then if we're at 90%, you get maybe another $5,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that's how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
This way they have skin in the game, for everything.
Yeah.
For production. Yeah. I mean,
And they're willing to work across departments. They're not, the service and sales managers are working together instead of against each other.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
you can't pit people against each other, in the HVAC business. If you're trying to pay your service manager on gross margin, if you're trying to pay your service manager on average ticket, you're taking away from his desire to send leads over to the sales department.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to make sure that your bonus plan and your pay structure is incentivizing the vision of the business.
Yeah.
So that everybody wants the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's not just about me and my bonus.
Right.
Right. So that's the way I kind of like to do it. Give them a little bit along the way, and then at the end, boom.
Yeah.
You know, and if we didn't hit everything, they had $5,000 in bonus, that other 10 went away.
Yeah. This conversation went way down deeper into one thing, but I love it. This was really good. We really focused on the revenue generation. I love it. What there may be just 2 or 3 key takeaways for all this that we talked about for someone that is struggling. You know, that was a topic you had yesterday, overcoming sales, because there's some guys that are struggling, right? Because it's harder now.
Yes.
And maybe they took their eyes off some things earlier, which is what I've heard. What would little couple takeaways you give for people? Hey, focus on this now and get better this way right now.
Focus on your call center, calls on the board every day.
Yeah.
Right? The things you can control. And then who's getting those calls? Know each individual technician or salesperson and their results individually.
Yeah.
And make sure that they're getting the proper production on every single call.
Yeah. Because
again, things are tight. We don't know what's going on in the marketing world. It is crazy.
Yeah.
I see so many different things in the marketing world. Just these wild swings in from one market to the next and on what people are doing.
Yeah.
If you're a little guy, start building your brand.
Yeah.
If you're a big guy, make sure you got a strong brand in the market.
Yeah.
Right. Don't spend all your money on branding if you're a little guy, because you need some today business.
Yeah.
Right. So you need some direct response stuff happening. But I see bigger businesses and their marketing results with a good brand name in the marketplace. Their lead cost is a third of what others are.
Branding works.
I could tell you, I an ARS business in San Diego, and then one of my SOAR clients in San Diego.
Yeah.
Bill Howe.
Yeah.
Bill Howe has such a great brand in the marketplace. And my GM at say the San Diego Rescue Rooter used to complain all the time. They're everywhere. I see them everywhere. I hear them everywhere. How come we can't do it?
Yeah.
We used to spend, and this goes back probably 2019, 2020. We used to spend $187 to $195 for a booked appointment at that business.
Yeah.
I was just at Bill Howe, $67. That's a third.
Wow.
In the same market in online marketing.
Yeah.
That's all brand.
Yeah.
That is all brand name, because everybody knows, and they have some great family commercials. And I don't know, in yesterday's meeting, I sat in one of them that was about marketing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that are doing well that have the brands is really kind of a family thing. I mean, kind of seeing that trend.
Yes.
But having a brand in the market's pretty important.
Big. Yep.
A consistent message in the market is important. Don't jump all over with your messaging.
In marketing and sales work together because of that. The sale becomes easier because they're like, I like you guys. I saw the commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bolden Brothers is another one that they have a great name, a great brand in the marketplace.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And so if you're small, really start looking at what your brand is, what you stand for, and build on that.
Yeah. And you can do it small. You can get the truck wrap, have the guys look nice.
Yep.
Sponsor all the football games.
Yes.
The community things. Yeah.
It's easy to do, and that's the inexpensive guerrilla marketing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But start building it now. So when you're big, you're multiplying your marketing dollars.
100%.
Multiply them, right?
Love it. SOAR, you're pretty much booked, right? The on-sites.
I am.
There's a wait list to talk.
There is a long wait list.
That's all right. That's okay. But your sales management program, you probably could still take on extra people, right?
Yeah, I got 20 right now that between the two groups is about 10 and 10 in each group. I could take probably 20 more.
And you guys meet every Friday?
Every Friday.
Every Friday.
Every Friday we meet 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I always have a topic
that
we're going to cover. But I'll tell you, 75% of the time, I never have to cover that topic, because our conversation about last week's numbers, what our plans this week are, we'll find something in there that let's talk about it because somebody's having a challenge, or more than one of them are having that same challenge.
Yeah.
Now we'll discuss it as a group, and people come out of there with some great information.
And they have to share numbers.
Yeah, they have to share numbers.
Yeah, so there's accountability and real talk.
Yep.
So, I mean, I bet you've seen some results, guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
And you're not talking, and you're not in a vacuum anymore. Just like the owners come to these things and they have resources and other owners.
Right.
With those sales managers, service managers.
Yep.
I got other people that are doing this with me.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So,
Yep. And they'll ask, right? I mean, I do it on a vibe board, so it's not just the talking.
Oh, that's right. You're
vibing board. Vibe board. I'm vibing all the time.
Yeah.
And I love doing it on the vibe board because, you can see most of me,
Yeah.
right? And you can write on it and do a lot of different things. It's really cool. And so, you'll have people like asking each other questions.
Yeah.
Hey, how did you do that? And so now you got the other guys coaching them up on different things they do. And just, it's my favorite time of the week is those 2 Friday calls.
That's cool.
It really is. Cause originally they had to start building their relationship.
Yeah.
Online.
Yeah.
Right. But now they're all friends.
Yeah.
Right. They've never met each other.
Yeah.
Live face to face, but now they're all friends.
That's cool.
And it's really cool. It's great. I enjoy it.
And people are interested. I think they can sign up on the website or probably reach out to their coach.
Go to the hub. There's a registration deal on the hub. Go do that. I'd love to see another 20 folks.
Yeah.
40 is about max because 20 and 20, and not everybody's on every one because things come up on Friday.
Yeah.
They're not able to make it, but man, they
I love it.
I love it. It's a great deal.
So members, hey, this is the great insight Carl spit out today. This is the stuff you get every Friday, and those guys need training too. So, Carl, thank you so much for all your time. This was a lot of
Thanks
fun.
for inviting me. I love doing it.
The Successful Contractor podcast is part of the CertainPath family. CertainPath builds successful home service businesses and has for 23 years. We do it by providing contractors with a proven path to success, professional coaching, software solutions, and a member community of over 1,000 contractors just like you. Doubling your sales with a 20% net profit and an inspiring company culture is all possible. Let us show you the way. With CertainPath, success is made certain. Visit www.mycertainpath.com for more information.